So let's move on. Let's talk about the next feature I'm going to demonstrate for you, which is transaction itemization or transaction splitting, which is a very popular popular request and feature that we get asked about. So the splitting feature is really cool because it provides you the ability to split your transactions into multiple different expense categories or projects or clients, etc. By splitting your transactions either for yourself or for your business, you'll have incredibly detailed data on your expenses, which can help you take better control of your finances, save more money, and even like set yourself up for having stronger financial planning and growth down the line. So let's open up this target transaction. So here is my raw transactional data, and this is the file that Neat is suggesting to me that I could connect or match to this transaction. And I'm going to use this so that I can split this transaction. I'm actually going to select this as my suggested match just so I can zoom in on this receipt a little bit more for you guys so you can see what I'm working on. So this target receipt, you can see, is kind of split up into four main areas: apparel, grocery, home, and toys. So if you are in an instance where you want to split a transaction into different expense categories, maybe some of these purchases are business related, some of them are more personal related, and I want to split those out separately so that I have accurate reporting about where I'm spending my money and the types of expenses I'm spending my money on, you can use the split transaction feature. To do that, you have to open up the transaction you want to split, and then you'll just click split transaction here. And you can split a transaction up, as far as I know, as many times as you want. At this point, I don't think there's really any limit to how many times you can split a transaction. I'm actually going to split this transaction up into four different categories: apparel, grocery, home, and toys. And so how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to add a description for one of my splits. So I'll type in apparel. And I can change the category for this specifically. We'll choose like clothing and shoes since it's apparel related. And I did some of the calculations earlier, so I know exactly what the breakdowns are for all of these different things. But I know that on the apparel, I spent $45 specifically on apparel. I can also add additional details to this item, to this specific itemized transaction. So I can add like a specific customer or a specific project. Maybe we'll say transactions webinar on this one. I can maybe add a location here. I could even add some notes to this. And these notes and all these other details will be associated with this line item on this transaction. And then I can save. Whenever you split a transaction, Neat is going to do some validation for you and let you know that your transaction isn't balanced at this point because I've only accounted for $45 of the $251 total dollars I spent in this transaction. So before I'm able to exit out or even save this transaction, I have to finish balancing my transaction here. So the way that I'm able to do that is to account for the remaining balance. So in this instance, I'm going to add 3 more line items. You'll notice that as you add a line item, Neat is going to automatically calculate the amount for you with whatever the remaining balance is or remaining amount is on that transaction. And then you can just change that amount if you're adding more items or line items to a transaction. So now we're going to add one for grocery. And we're going to change the category for this to groceries as well. And I'm just typing in groceries because we have the search bar here. It makes it much easier than scrolling through all of those different categories. And then I know on groceries, I spent $6.34. We'll also mark this as personal. Maybe I'll add a different location to this one. And I can save this. We'll see my line item balance is still under. So I still have $200.64 that I need to account for in this transaction before I can save it. So I'm going to add another line item, you can see that amount automatically fills in for you, but I'm going to change that. So now we'll add home, and we'll say maybe this was home improvement. And I know that I spent $113.75 on home improvement. I'll also mark this as personal, and then we'll save. And now I have one line item left that I'm going to add. I could add, like I said, I could add as many line items as I want, as far as I know, to this transaction. But in this instance, I'm only adding one last one, which is for toys, which the remaining balance is $86.89. Neat knows that and calculates that for me. I can add a description for toys. Maybe I'll go in here and I'll say this was a gift, and I'll enter this in as categories gifts. I could add additional fields if I wanted to. Maybe I'll leave this one as not personal, say it's like business. Maybe I'll say the project is business A, and we can save. Now, at this point, my line items are all balanced. So each one of these amounts calculates and adds up to the total amount of the transaction. And the really cool thing is these line items will flow through to all of my reports, all of my CSV exports, and also to my grid as well, so that I can get, a clear picture of where I'm spending my money. So instead of, taking the full amount for this target receipt and labeling it general merchandise for the full $250 that I spent, I can split it into a bunch of different line items and get really detailed information about the actual different expense categories and amounts associated with this particular transaction. And when I close this, so we're going to close this now. Oh, let me save and continue. My transaction's now updated. And now when I see this target receipt here, we can actually see that the category, unlike the other ones that have just one category, this one actually has multiple categories. And when I hover over that, I can see all of the different categories that are associated with that specific transaction. And this is really great because this also allows me to effectively split receipts that are in my file cabinet, because I can matching source documents from my file cabinet, like this target receipt that's currently in my 2024 personal expenses folder, with the raw data from the transaction associated with this receipt. And then I can split the transaction, effectively allowing me to split the receipt as well. And like I said, all of those line itemizations will flow through to your reports. They flow through to this breakdown as well. So, like clothing and shoes, we can now see $45 is associated with the category clothing and shoes, because I associated $45 of that target transaction to that expense category. And those other expense categories would be in here as well. Like gifts for $86.89 is another one that I just added.